Alright, hello, hello. So today we are going to, of course, be playing a bit of Lorcana on Pixelborn, and I have a couple of things that are pretty interesting that we're going to test on stream here. We're trying some a little bit different color combinations than maybe we had before. Something that is a bit different from the meta, maybe attacks it on a sort of different axis. So to start off, we have a deck that when we bang it up on Dreamborn, it's currently sitting right around $50. Most of it is in, I think, like the Fox Mims and the Yzmas, probably. Maybe the Merlin Rabbits. The rest of it is all pretty much nothing. But the way that the deck is shaped up is you sort of have your goats, the spell books, like things that do direct lore gain, as well as Bippity Boppity Boo in combination with the Merlin Goat. This is able to untap it, replay it immediately if you want, or you can switch a rabbit out for a goat, etc. And this then allows you to gain 2 lore with every time that you hit a goat. You can gain 2 different cards if you pull a goat out, or sorry, a rabbit out and put it back in. So it's similar to Friends on the Other Side. And if you do something like, say, shift Yzma onto the 3-drop, you can, say, tuck one of your rabbits in, draw the 3 cards, and then you can Bippity Boppity, switch it out for Genie, bounce one of their cards. You end up having the Yzma, both Yzmas in your hand, and then the Genie ends up being in play, which bounces something of theirs. It's pretty good evasive. We've got the Tinkerbell, which in combination with either Mim Fox or Mim Snake can beat up on like surfers, just because you give them evasive and allows you to attack, and that it is just a reasonable evasive threat on its own. Pretty much the deck just plays to try and put stuff on the board that replaces itself, like the Cuzco, your rabbits, sort of like you would expect an Amethyst deck to do, and then it uses some of these green cards to sort of close out. Hey Zepha, appreciate the raid. Convenient start time, I suppose. Yeah, we have a couple of green cards. This is mostly an Amethyst deck, leveraging like the enter and leave abilities on the goats and the rabbits, the bouncing for the Mims and the snakes, and then a bit of evasive from, say, Pascal, Genie, Tinkerbell, etc. I've played it a little bit. One of these loss was to a DC, but we've beat up on red purple a couple times. You kind of just sort of race and burn them down, but we've edited the deck a little bit since then, so we're gonna give this a try and then we'll see where we sit. I have some other ones sort of brewed up that I'd like to try as well. I really like how strong Goat is. Same with Rabbit and the Mims. Like, it's really hard for me to want to get away from Amethyst, but I want to mix it up a bit because just playing RP all the time is like fine. You know, it's probably what I'll end up playing for most tournaments anyway, just because it's a deck that I'm really familiar with, but something like this is pretty interesting. The problem with the Dragon is it costs too much, and it's very weak to a lot of the removal that the format is playing right now. It's weak to, like, the Big Blue Hades, it's weak to Be Prepared. You know, it's just putting these cards in your hand, and there's just, like, better things to be doing for 7 a lot of the time. So we're against Popsicles here. So we really want to try and burn them out if we can. We can keep 1 rabbit. We don't keep the Genie. I don't mind keeping a spellbook, but it's kind of unnecessary to keep this early. We'll draw onto him eventually. This deck draws a lot of cards. I'm kind of in the mood to just like play out a bunch of Pascals and then race. Against this deck, that's usually pretty good. Which means that maybe we get rid of the Cuzco, since our turn 2 is going to be just double Pascal. And then we're likely just not even going to play the Snake. It may end up going directly to Ink so that we can play the Rabbit on 4. It's a bit of an aggressive draw, but against these colors, they typically don't have a ton of early flyer interaction. So there's a good chance that this will work out. Alright, let's bash here. Play a bunch of flyers. Say go. We'll do a ton of evasive, and then in theory we have the goats and the spellbooks, as well as the bippity boppity to eventually close it out. So we do need to draw one additional uninkable. Appreciate that, DJ and Zephyr, for the follows as well. Oh no! A Cruella! That's so unexpected, but I suppose it makes sense for the metagame. Given that, I still think that we bash, and then we probably just play the Yzma instead of worrying about this friends on the other side. Because then, oh no. Alright, we're fine, we're fine. Everything's fine. The alternative is that we friends on the other side. The problem is if we friends on the other side, then this Cruella is going to get to eat all of these Pascals, which is a bit of a problem. If we play the Yzma, then we can at least deal with the Cruella next turn, which I think is fine. I don't love it, but it's either that or it just, like, popsicles and then eats our entire board, which we would rather not have it do. I suppose Cruella does make sense. It's a way for them to interact with Surfer more favorably, which makes sense. Claver, appreciate the follow as well. We will need an inkable pretty badly, but if we get one inkable, then we should be in a pretty good spot here. Play out another popsicle, Shield of Virtues. So far it's looking like a pretty typical flavor of this deck. Makes sense. Nice. Okay. I would like to be able to shift this, but given that we need to play a rabbit this turn, this is fine. Draw a Mim. So if I Yzma here, they're almost certainly going to be able to... Right now we are testing purple-green. If we Pascal the Cruella, then the Tala doesn't get to just trade into Yzma. But I think this is just fine. If they trade here, it kind of doesn't really matter. We're running 4 Spellbooks, and 4 Bippity Boppities, and 4 Goats. So it is a pretty aggressive deck that is also pretty cheap. If you actually look here, deck. So this is the list, the second link there. It ends up being a little unusual as far as how it tries to close games, which obviously isn't that surprising given the color combo, but you can race most of the decks pretty well. I did struggle a little bit against like steel decks in general. Sometimes your draw is just weird against some of the steel decks. Yeah, Bippity Boppity is good for cheap goat loops, because for 2, it's just 2 more lore that you can gain instantly, and then there's also the... I think I will cast this. Let's get rid of the Maleficent, and I'm going to play the other rabbit here. I could have kept the Maleficent, assuming that they're going to B-prep, but I'm just going to play this, and then I can do these 2, and that's fine as well. Yeah, Bippity Boppity on the goat is really nice. I have all the spellbooks just for more, like, direct burn. Basically, the idea is that you are really just trying to sort of play the normal Amethyst game of just gaining lore with the early idiots, and then when you get to the point of having a little bit more ink, then you're following it up with, like, your goats and your other burn things. So we have a couple of options. We can go this direction right away, or I can do something like a Cusco Rabbit, which I think I'd prefer to do here, just so we get a little bit more stuff on the board. Get rid of an Olaf here. We'll do the Cusco. Say go. I don't necessarily mind Yzmaing a Rabbit in this deck either. Just gives us a lot more resources to work with. You don't generally need a ton of ink in this deck, but if you do get to, say, 10 ink, it allows you to do, like, the goat plus the Mim, and it also draws you into more goats and spellbooks. But yeah, Bippity Boppity is really nice in a deck like this, because you can also, if you hit Rabbit, it just draws 2 cards, it's just another Friends on the other side. You can change the rabbit out for like other cards as well, so things like that are pretty interesting too. Let's hit with both of these. I think I'm gonna Yzma the rabbit. Draw some extra cards, and then what is our next turn gonna look like? We'll be at maybe 8 if we want, so we should probably keep a 2-drop in addition to something else. We're pretty close on lore. I don't think that we need Tinkerbell here then. So I think we can get rid of Tinkerbell and then just say go. Invalid deck is unfortunate here. I've been getting a lot of disconnects lately. My internet's been kind of weird. Alright, so we'll draw an extra card. Nice. Alright, we sacrifice Yzma, that's fine. Not particularly surprising. I wasn't really playing around the Tremaine. We could have. We could have very easily played around the Tremaine there if we wanted. In this spot, I think... Could just take out the Gaston. Get some 2 lore out of the goat. This would be 4, 5, 6, 7. Get to play an extra thing, though, which is kind of sad. This isn't a particularly threatening board. We could go a little wide. We could do something like Kuzco, Flynn Rider. I guess it would be a goat, which is a little awkward. If they B-prep this board, I don't really care. Right? That's not really that big of a deal. What if we just get rid of a snake? And then just play a bunch of things. Just do this. Because if they blow up the board, like, that kills most of their own stuff, too. Which I'm kind of okay with. And this is double Tremaine protection. Another Gaston, sure. So in theory, this will put us at 15. Hey, Sean, how are you? We actually almost get to finish this next turn. It's pretty close. So it'll be like this, this, this. That's 15. Actually, do we finish it? This is 6, 9. Yeah, this would be enough to finish it, right? So we can do this. We go snake, bounce the goat, play the goat, Bippity the goat. We'll be 1 short, but it's not like that big of a difference. Nice. 2 degrees. Yeesh. Yeah, that's in Texas, right? Or somewhere thereabouts. Yeah, I saw that. It's rough. It's been like -10 here. It's what, -8 right now? It's been pretty cold here, but, you know, being in the northern part, it just isn't that big of a deal. It's annoying, but it's not that unusual. Yeesh, that's rough. Yeah, I don't really like going outside much when it's this cold. When it hurts to breathe, just like being outside, it's pretty brutal. But that was a pretty good game. A good example of like where you kind of just get to burn them out with the cards. Like we had other things that we could follow up with if we got blown up again. And you have enough cards because most of your things replace themselves that it's pretty nice. And the deck is cheap, which I also kind of like. It would be nice to warm up a little bit before Milwaukee. So this is the first time I've played against this with blue steel, so we'll have to see how good the burn package is against this deck, because a lot of your early game stuff gets killed pretty quickly. So we want to get rid of some of the top end. And we don't need the draw as much. Something like this maybe is okay. Not a great hand. But we'll see. We're on the draw, so it can improve pretty easily. The goat isn't bad. I think I'm getting rid of the snake here. Yeah, I should be in Milwaukee. I'm going to come in on Friday, stay the night. And then I have a hotel for Saturday as well. And then I'll play out through Sunday, and then I'll head home. So we have a couple of options. If we play the Olaf, then we can, like, ram the Mimfox into the Eric. But I almost want to play the Yzma the turn after, so I think I'm just going to do this and make them kill the Flynn Rider. I don't know, I assume a decent amount of people are going to be planning on going to Milwaukee. If it's within a reasonable driving distance, I think you don't have to, but you're kind of compelled. You know, Midwestern close is a pretty wide range a lot of times, where you're like, oh, it's close enough that I just should drive. Okay, so this is an interesting question that we're being asked here. Do we want to kill the Prince Eric, or would we rather them maybe try to discard a card? Because if we bash the Prince Eric here, then that gives us... Yeah, I'm cooking a little bit. If we bash the Prince Eric, then this has 2 health left. But then we don't have our Flynn Rider in play anymore, which is a little awkward. Alternatively, we play like the Yzma. And then what? You know, which is not really the best run out here. I think we can get rid of Tinkerbell, though. Yeah, I kind of want to get this Prince Eric off the table. Because if their plan is just to, like, wheel us next turn, I don't know if that really matters a ton. Ideally, I'm going to run on this goat out next turn if it's an option. I might draw 2 cards. We'll have to see what their play is. If they end up playing out like a Cogsworth here, then they likely have a wheel in their hand. But if they don't, then we probably are okay drawing the cards instead of just trying to quest. Yeah, I still think I'm okay playing the goat, though. So let's do that. Is Cusco a consideration over the Genie? You could, but the Genie is nice because it's both evasive and it does something when it comes into play. And if you shift the Yzma in Bippity, then you can put the Genie in right away. You can put it in a few turns early as well, which is something worth considering. I don't think I need this Friends on the other side now. Just play out the goat and pass. Okay, ideally I want to put as many of the goats actually into play, because worst case is that it gains 2 lore for us. If they decide to eat their Quill, it wouldn't surprise me. So we got rid of 1 Benja, which is nice. Oh, that's great for us, actually. Weird that they hit the Fox. I guess to protect the Flaversham, maybe? I'm kind of fine with that, actually. So we do have a Bippity Boppity Boo. We can bounce both of these to their hand if we want. We can tuck our goat back in and then turn it into a Genie if we want. That's an option. It's a little weird. We wouldn't be able to do that with the Yzma, though. We would end up with a Yzma in play, which is a little bit worse. I don't mind Genie bouncing the Flaversham here, though. I'm just debating on whether or not we want to do anything with this Bippity or not here. I definitely think I'm playing a 6-drop, so I think we're getting rid of this Flynn Rider for sure. I weirdly don't mind putting the goat back into the deck. But we were not able to sing the Bippity if we do that. And I'd rather have the genie in play than not. So I think our play is to do this. We just bounced that. Could bounce this too. I figured it out. Let's do this on the genie. Replay the genie. Bounce this too. Say go. If they want to spend their whole next turn, like, inking the genie, I think that's fine. Which they opted not to do. See what their 3-drop is here. Popsicle. So they do have a Flabbersham to draw as well. I think my play is just to genie again. Bounce this. Quest with these two. We could run out Pascal as well if we wanted. I for sure want to ink this Yzma. I'm just debating on whether or not this is better as an ink. We're threatening, what, 5? Yeah, I think I can play this. There's not really anything that they can cast for 8 or 9 that threatens this and also kills the Pascal. Like, they have to wait basically 2 full turns to be able to really interact with this board favorably in these colors. They can deal with one of our threats. They can deal with either a little bit of the go wide portion by doing, say, something like Let It Go or just blasting them, or they can replay the Hades and do this. But if they're not doing both, then it's obviously a lot worse. So I think we bash with those. Hey, Michelangelo. I'd like to put this goat back in our deck. And maybe draw 2 cards. So let's play the Yzma. Put the goat back in the deck. We could Bippity. Put something else back in the deck if we want. We can ink the Kuzco. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to play out the Maleficent and then say go. I think it's okay. The Yellow-Green Mufasa deck is reasonable. I've looked at it. I've played against it. I lost once. They had a really good draw. And I wasn't playing around Rapunzel, and they just, like, bashed into my snake and ruined my life. But I do think that there are enough ways of sort of playing around it that it's not ruining my whole world by not jumping on that train. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that puts us to 15. Let's play out a rabbit here. We rip a Mim Fox. We could Bippity the Yzma to put the rabbit back in. I really want the rabbits on my deck that badly, though. I feel like I'd rather just keep going a little wide. Unfortunately, grabbing the goat here is not the ideal. But what I can do is I can Bippity one of these rabbits. Draw a card, and then put this goat in anyway. And say go. This card is very strong if you have a deck that can take advantage of it. Like, we could have put the Yzma back in as well. But I think just having the goat down is fine. Like, even if they have a way of blowing up this board, double swords, or casting a swords, wheeling, swordsing again, it's fine. Like, it blows up our board. We go to 17, and then any goat is good. If they're directly smashing my goats, I don't think that puts them in an awesome spot. I suppose they sort of have to do that to give them a chance against what we're doing over here, but like, what's the play? Are we trying to kill this Yzma with something? Smash. Okay, that's fine. That is acceptable. They are back down to 3 cards left. We have 11 ink here. We can probably Genie here. Bounce this. So we've got, what, 5? We don't really need to draw any cards. Probably fine just doing something like this. Ink this, play the other Yzma. And if they double swords us, we know that they're pretty well out of juice. And that's okay. That means that they're down all of their swords but 1. And these are not vulnerable to Tinkerbell plus swords here. Yeah, Blue Steel's a pretty good deck. And it's definitely very good against the metagame a lot of times, given that in general the steel things are very strong. A lot of the Amethyst decks are just trying to draw a lot of cards, so the wheel is very good, like the Whole New World. But in spots where the Whole New World isn't great, like against a deck like this, then you're sort of just giving us more gas. It's like we grabbed the swords, but because we played the bell, you know, there's just too much on the board to deal with. Yeah, so I saw your list, and I saw a few things in it that I liked, some that I liked less than others, but overall, like, there were a lot of things cooking in what was going on there. So I'm just really leaning into one part of it, which is just like going all in on the spell books and the goats and the bippities, like really leaning into like this portion of it as opposed to doing more variety with it. It's just all close the game kind of thing. And it's been good. Yeah, I definitely think that it is easy to look at Ruby and Steel as the... Yeah, it's very rabbit dependent, for sure. Yeah, if you're looking at making a deck right now and you want to be able to combat multiple different kinds of decks, there's a few ways that you can do it. You can either play a card that can allow you to catch up, such as grab your swords or be prepared. Like, those are cards that you can 2, 3, 4, 5 for 1 pretty comfortably a lot of times, if your opponent goes too wide. Or you can try to go under it. There's quite a few different aggro decks that can go under it. This is one of them. A lot of the sort of like Lilo aggro decks can do a pretty good job of going under it as well. Especially if they're running purple as a secondary color, because it gives them the goats to sort of close. This is sort of taking that to the extreme, and really adding in more of the things that allow you to really get that huge advantage. So we don't need this bippity boppity. I like the rest of this against this color combo, especially on the draw. That was probably not a great draw, but it's more useful than the bippity this early. I don't know if I'll want double Pascal or not. If we don't double Pascal, it's going to be hard to play any of the Pascals, but we can maybe... Like, really, I need to have this out and then this to deal with a Surfer, and that's an option for us. I think I'm just going to ink a Pascal. I'm going to not play it and pass. Did I consider Befuddle? I did not initially consider Befuddle, because Befuddle can't quest for lore. which is not ideal a lot of times for what we're trying to do. It is good tempo. It can be very good tempo. In this case, I am glad that I didn't play the Pascals because we have drawn more Uninkables. So let's play that and pass. We may end up having to use this on a Merlin Rabbit at some point. I'm hoping that they Surfer. I know that feels a little weird, but Fidget is also fine. Can deal with Fidget here. So in this case, I guess we're going to have to ink one of these friends on the other side. Play a Yzma and pass. So we can dunk the Fidget with the Tinkerbell combo here, which I think we'll probably do. The Mini likely isn't going to attack unless they are able to bounce it with the Snake, or Fox, of course. But they will almost certainly either draw 2 cards with Fidget or attack with it. Oh, they just quest with both, huh? Both of them play Rabbit. They play the Fox. Okay, that's fine. Play the Fox, replay it? Question mark. Try to race. It's a possibility. Yeah, that's what they end up doing. I don't think that the 5-drop Mim is a playable card, unfortunately. It doesn't really make your Mims better, and the tap ability on it is just worse than questing for 2. There is some world where we want to use it for like the Bippity Boppity, but it ends up just not really doing as much as I would like it to. I'm debating on what I want to do. I likely want to kill this Fidget here. I'm just debating on whether or not I need this Friends on the other side. I feel like I kind of do. Which then means that I have to get rid of the Fox. We just like don't have any characters in play for this Fox, I don't think. Let's play Tinkerbell on the Yzma, hit the Fidget, and say go. We may have to be in a place where we, like, Rabbit Friends with the Tinkerbell. We'll see. They'll likely take the Minnie Mouse into the Yzma, which is fine. Yeah, the Tinkerbell's really good. The Tinkerbell's been a good card forever, but especially against, like, the Surfer Minis and such, it's pretty choice in what it allows you to do. Like, being able to have what is functionally a Pongo that also gives other value sometimes, like being able to knock out flyers, is quite strong. Okay, I wish I had that Fox still, but we do have the Genies, which can be okay. Another Fidget, huh? Okay. A bit annoying, but not that big of a deal. Sort of time walks them to play a Fidget here. Do I just need to draw a bunch of cards this turn? I can, like, Friends sing here. I can even Bippity the Rabbit out if I want. Or I could sing the Rabbit out. Let's do this. I mean, I could also just let this trade. It's not the end of the world if they trade with their Fidget here. So it doesn't really change what we're doing a ton. Like, it slows us down a little bit, but we have a lot of card draw and they don't. Like, if we get rid of this, we get to keep the Cusco to try and fight against Tremaine. Let's play this first, which I think is what we're going to do either way. I'm going to keep this just in case they play another flyer. I think I can get rid of the Maleficent here. And just pass. I'm a little worried about Tremaine. We may end up playing 2 things next turn instead. Instead of just running out Yzma to bounce the rabbit. If they opt to just trade Fidget, I think that's fine. They might even play Tremaine this turn. They opt to play Rabbit. That's fine. I'd like to get the Fidget off the board so that these Genies end up being a little bit more impactful. Okay, so... given this, we can Genie and bounce both of them. Is that even that good? Not particularly. What if we get rid of the Fox and play Kuzco Tinkerbell? That doesn't work. We don't have enough resources for that. We could... Fox on Fox... Man, that's tricky. What if I just ink the Fox and then play these 2? Or ink the Yzma, do the same. I think I'd rather ink the Fox here. Let's do that. We do need to start getting some lore in at some point, otherwise we're going to be at a pretty big disadvantage. Especially if we end up in a really rough Tremaine battle, because we just don't have the cheap cards to be able to deal with it. But we are in a good position here where if we don't attack with this Kuzco, I can just quest with the Merlin Rabbit and the Tinkerbell, and then jam the Yzma here. We can, like, do this, do this. I can Yzma to draw just, like, a bunch of cards. Okay, we draw a bunch of cards. We're going to keep the Olaf here to be able to play around Tremaines with one of these Genies. Assuming that they're going to be prep at some point. I can get rid of the Maleficent here, however. If I quest with Kuzco, we can play the Olaf to play around it. Or at least play around them killing one of these 2. I think I'm just going to say go. Like, we have a much larger clock. We're going to be able to catch up pretty reasonably if they don't wipe this, just because of the Yzma. Okay, there's a Tremaine. That is fine. That is unsurprising. I'm weirdly considering playing Genie, Olaf, going to 7. They're just putting the Tremaine back in their hand. Can even kill the rabbit if we wanted, but I don't think we need to. Another Olaf is actually a good draw here. I'd like to ink. It might be this Mim Fox. I just don't think the Fox is really doing it for us here. Like, there's nothing that I want to Fox except for this rabbit. Actually, maybe the Fox is okay here. If I want to go to 7, the Fox is a lot less good. I think it's too expensive and doesn't really do anything when it comes into play, unfortunately. If it costs 7, it really needs to do something like the turn that it comes down. I wonder if I just don't... I wonder if I just don't Genie here and just play more stuff. Is that even viable? Like, force them to B-prep? I think this is happening. No matter what. I'm just debating on whether or not I want to Mim and, like, hit the rabbit here. It doesn't feel great. I think I am just going to do this line. I'm going to hit here. We're going to put this in play. And I think I'm going to get rid of this fox and say go. It could be that I'm supposed to bippity like the Yzma in this spot here to get the Genie in play, because it's cheaper, and it also leaves us the ability to cast the rabbit, for example. But if their plan is just to trade off directly, then I guess I don't really care. That doesn't really bother me that much. Because if they go to 11 here, we also go to 11. Like, we've been able to keep up pretty comfortably. It's another bippity. Okay. Interesting. I may just use one on a rabbit here. I'm going to play a rabbit to start, so we can draw a card and see where that leaves us. So they're questing for 4. We're going to go to 11. Bounce Tremaine again. Kind of don't hate bouncing Tremaine again. Do something like this. I'm going to hold on to that. We don't really need more than 8 right this moment, because we can always ink it next turn. Okay, that's fine. Draw a card here. Yeah, a goat would be great here. Like, I'd like to hold on to some of these for goat. Them playing this is actually not that bad for us, because it allows us to do, like, Genie plus Maleficent if we want. They just inked a goat. That's a weird choice. So we have drawn a goat. That's interesting. This is... Speak of the devil, indeed. So I can, like, goat... I'm, like, one short of doing what I would want to be able to do here, which is goat bippity the Tinkerbell. So I think the play is just to do Maleficent to start. And then I guess Rabbit. And then we ink the Tinkerbell. And say go. Yeah, I would rather develop a couple of things, because if I can sing this, that would be even better. And then I can get rid of the Maleficent itself. Because I can even sing Bippity with the rabbit as well if I want. Play the goat, flicker it twice. So they shift the Tremaine. Okay, it's fine. That's actually good for us against this Tremaine. This is going to put them to 16. 16 is not a terribly scary number. I'm surprised they didn't quest with this Minnie Mouse. I guess it's Tremaine protection. So put us to 13. I don't have enough to do these both. I can just do this. I can do spellbook, spellbook. I can ink this. I don't actually need it. Say go. So this is 5, 6, 7. So we're one short, ink-wise, of being able to do this next turn. I may have to use the genie just to buy us a turn of doing spellbook. Because this is... puts us to 14... 15, 16, 17, 18. But that is all of our ink, so we will be one short. So if they have goat and bounce, they get us here. Maybe I should have done the math on that and then genied last turn. Like genied the Tremaine so that they have to replay it. That's unfortunate. I can do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I can bounce 2 of them. Or I can just end up with the goat in play and still do these 2, which I think is better. The double Tremaine turn was not ideal, but that was manageable, I think. Okay, I think the play is Genie bouncing the Tremaine. I just should have done that last turn, given that my hand was a little bottlenecked. Like, if they're Tremaining and killing my Genie instead of gaining 2 lore, I think I'm okay here. And then I ink this. And then we go... Quest. Quest. And then I guess... if I put the goat in, we go to... we're still short. But this is enough, so I can do this once on the Genie to bounce another thing. I just needed to do that the turn before. Like, even the same line. Just to remove everything with the 2 spellbooks. We'll see. If they have goat plus a thing, they've probably got us. I know that they inked one earlier, so they might not have one. But they've only used 1 or 2 of their bounces, so it is very possible for them to have 17 in this spot. Obviously, if they don't kill us exactly, we've got them with this... Yeah, if they're playing Tremaine, we're fine then. They just can't beat the books plus the goat plus the Bippity here. So this is 5. They did have the mem, but they did not have the... they did not have the goat, so we lucked out a little bit there. Right, this, goat. Bippity boppity on the goat, and that'll be plenty. Sweet. We take it. Yeah, the double Tremaine turn was a little rough, and I think, given that I had the spellbooks, like, I had the enough to win as long as I didn't die. I think I could have played that a little differently and to angle towards that. Alright, this will be a little tough as far as matchups-wise. I have not won this, but I've only played it once. Generally, this is not an awesome matchup. Yeah, there's a lot of weird choices that you kind of have to go through with a deck like this. I like the Fox. The Olaf is okay. The Cusco is okay. Honestly, the Sand is fine. I think this is worse, maybe. I think I'm going to get rid of the Yzma to play the Olaf here. I'm going to play out the Kuzco on 2, and then we'll see if I want to do the Maleficent or the Fox. It kind of depends on what our opponent's got going on. I don't need a second Tinkerbell. I don't think we're going to do more than one this game. I do like that we have one, however. So they can't freely kill the Kuzco, but they could shift to the Queen and then bash the Olaf. If they do that, I'm willing to bounce this and smash it. If they just play Hercules, that's fine. Yeah, they opt not to quest here, which is smart. Questing there is a mistake. I do think I quest with both of these. Kind of a rough hand. Pitch and Witchin, appreciate the follows. I would like to play this Maleficent. I guess we don't need the friends on the other side then. I mean, we do need it, but I kind of have to play the Maleficent this turn because we kind of don't really have the ability to take a turn off of inking in this matchup. Because eventually, if they do hit us with a wheel, we need to follow it up with something. New World, appreciate the follow there as well. Yeah, I tried it with a bunch of Lucifer in the same slot that I have the genies in now. It was okay. There were some matchups where I could Lucifer a bunch of times and just, like, destroy their hand. And it was a secondary angle of attack that I could take against the decks. However, I played against a deck like this, and they just, like, I Lucifered them 3 times, and they still had a hand because they just had so many actions, and then they whole new worlded, and it was just totally a waste of time. So that can be a little rough, of course. If they decide to try and attack into what we're doing over here, I'm absolutely fine using this Mim to fight what's going on. Okay, we draw an extra card. Like, I would be okay blowing up almost this whole board to kill what they're doing over there. They opt to just have the Hercules, which means that they probably have a Shift Queen, or they didn't want this to be vulnerable. Do I just trade the Maleficent here for the Hercules? Keep the Olaf in play, and then play Tinkerbell? I kind of don't hate that. The Maleficent is really weak to swords, which generally is one of their better cards anyway. And the Hercules is a shift target. The Maleficent really is just good for singing from our side. Pascal is not necessary in a matchup like this. I would much rather have the Tinkerbell. And we don't really need the draw cards currently. Fine bashing with Olaf here. So we don't need to play the rabbit. I'd rather play out a threat that they do have answers to deal with it, but I'd rather them be dealing with our thing than just playing a rabbit, drawing a card, and then having them whole new world. So that doesn't really help us either. So this is probably the flute deck then if they're playing Gaston. Generally, the normal Seal Song doesn't play Gaston. Just because they don't need that many singers, realistically. So we'll see if they have the whole new world. They might. They have a Shift Queen here. It wouldn't surprise me if they kill the Olaf. They could also opt just to quest. If they do, that's fine. They might be killing the Olaf with the Aerial. They buffed Tinkerbell to kill it with the Queen thing. Okay, well that's like their whole hand, so I mean, that is a thing that they can do with their resources. So then in this spot, I guess I'm supposed to use the Fox to kill the Ariel and keep the Fox around. So that they have to sing with the Queen if they're going to sing. And then if we do get to play these genies, I'd rather not bounce the Ariel anyway, because it gives them the ability to dig deeper. I think we do this. I think I ink one of the Olafs and replay the other one. And then I say go. So they play another aerial, probably maybe digging for the actual whole new world. I doubt that they have it if the lines that they've been taking were leaning into like Criminal Mind just to deal with a single flyer. So they let the Storm Rage on. They can kill the Mim with that. Should be fine. Sure, that's acceptable. A little awkward here to Genie the Queen. Given that it puts 2 cards in their hand that they can ink with. About Cindy instead. I think I'd rather put the Queen in their hand. So I think that's what we're going to do. We'll do this. We'll play Genie, put the Queen in their hand. And quest with Olaf. Say go. Like, I don't love that they have Ariel in play, but between the two, I think I'd rather them replay the Queen and the Goon than bother with them being able to dig deeper. Like, shifting it again is the right call if they're planning on putting it back into play, because it is cheaper. Only costs 3 instead of 5 plus 1. See what they do with the rest of their mana. Okay, so they do Whole New World here. That's fine. If they play another 1-drop or a 2-drop, they could use Cinderella to sing Strength and kill the Genie. Should be less than ideal. I think Amethyst plus something makes the best aggro decks. And whether it's Amethyst and... So they Storm Rage on the Genie, so they must have like a Swords or something. I think it's some flavor of... I have another Queen here, which is unfortunate. It's probably some flavor of Amethyst something. I don't know what else to pair with it, but Amethyst and something, most likely. Okay, so I can... They all have different matchups that are bad, basically, which is the problem. So they have 6, we have 3. We can go to 9. Alternatively, I can, like, Genie here. I can play the Fox to kill the Ariel. And then I can Bippity the Genie to bounce, like, the Herc. Or I could keep the Genie in play as well. That's another option. I don't think 2 damage is where I want it to be. I think I'd rather replay it, because they did a lot of work just to make it so that it has all this damage on it. I think I'd rather just do this. We'll do this. Quest with Olaf here. I'm going to Mim, Fox, the Olaf. Bash the Ariel. I could even put this Queen back in their hand, but then they have this one that they can just shift it out right away as well. I'm going to do Bippity, this on Genie. Let's bounce the Hercules. We're going to ink Pascal. And we'll play this and pass. Talking a little bit too long on that turn. But I think I'm okay with this line. It keeps our Genie nice and healthy. It removes a bunch of their singers off the board and their potential shifters, like with Hercules. A single Queen is strong, but not that big of a deal right now for us. Like, we can manage a single one. This pulls enough of the stuff off the board that we're not too worried about them if they decide to just Whole New World again. And then next turn we can follow it up just like playing a Goat and a Tinkerbell or something. I'm a little concerned about them doing, say, Tinkerbell plus Shift, and this line ends up making it so that the Tinkerbell Shift doesn't pull all of the material that we had off the board. Sorry, Tinkerbell plus Grab Your Sword, rather. So if they decide to do it now, it, like, doesn't really accomplish much. they're better off just doing something else because the genie has so much health here at 4. They may just sing it and then do the swords as well. Like, that's another option. They may... So they did have a Hercules that they could have shifted with. You play out another Hercules. And be our guest, okay? And if they find another queen, they can have a second shifted queen, which is interesting. Okay, so they do that. They have another queen. It does make their board kind of scary with the double queen here. If they want, they can quest with one, shrink the Mim Fox, and then bash it with the other one. Which I guess is their most likely line. Unless they're planning on singing and killing Olaf, which seems unlikely. Okay, that's fine. So now we're in a spot where they have 5 on their board. I don't have the ability to kill 2 of these. Even if we decide to just bash one of the queens straight up with our genie, it doesn't necessarily forward our game plan too much. I'm still a little concerned about swords or double sword, but they're kind of running out of cards to do that with. What if we just do this, play the goat. This goat is good into the queens as well. What if I just jam a Yzma over the rabbit? Because if I play this, that incentivizes the double hit a lot more. And it doesn't really trade into their stuff super favorably. You know what? I'm just going to play the Tinkerbell and say go. I want them to be trying to double swords us. Because that uses basically all of their removal. And if they wheel us, it's just drawing us into more goats. So they do Tinkerbell us here. Probably 1 sword for sure. Be my assumption at least. Inca Gaston. They could be wheeling into looking for a sword. Okay, so they just have a swords. It's fine. That would have been a reason to play the Yzma. So they go up to 7. We can get to 14 with the genie. They're questing for 7. We can put them to 5. Yeah, I think the play here is just go full offensive. We quest with the genie. We'll play the rabbit. We drew a goat. Well, crud. I was thinking I was going to do Yzma Flynn Rider, but given that we drew the goat, we almost have to play it. As opposed to doing like Maleficent Flynn Rider here. 15, 16. If they have another sword, then it doesn't matter that much. But it is very good against like the Flynn Rider. Okay. I've talked myself into it. So they're pretty well dead if they just quest. But not 100% dead. There is a world where they just quest with everything and then we die because we don't gain enough lore. Because this is 2, 3, 4, so it puts us to 19, and we don't necessarily have something to bounce or Bippity the Merlin. We do have a lot of things that do that still. We're missing 2 foxes currently, and 1 Bippity, so this is 3 of our, like, 20 sources that do that, or whatever. Because we've got the other goats, we've got the snakes, we've got the snakes. Yeah, Cinderella's fine. Snakes, the other foxes, the other bippity-boppities, and we have a few redraws. We may even use the Merlin Rabbit to draw a card, since the 2 lore is better than the 1 lore anyway, because any one of those other cards is worth more. But we'll see what we draw. Was it a close game? That'll do it. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. That is one of our outs. For a budget deck in non-standard colors, this deck has been performing quite well against some of the all-stars of the format. Here, let me close this out and reset it so that we can look at the last couple games here. This is after a few changes. I've gone through a couple of revisions of this deck before I thought I'd show it off here. But overall, it's got a pretty good win rate for being as cheap as it is. But the amount of things, if you have that goat to interact with, or if you only need the 1 lore, and you have a goat in play, we've got like the fox, the other bippities, our own other genies would do it as well, because you can target it. The Yzmas, the snakes, and then the spellbook also is a finish. That's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards or whatever in our deck that can do that, which is a pretty substantial portion of the deck that can pull the goat out of play and do something with it. If we only need the 1 lore, at least. So we had a pretty good chance of drawing live there. But looking at our last couple of games, we fought against Red-Purple, which is one of the tricky decks. We fought against Flutes, we fought against Popsicles, and we fought against Blue-Gray. That's pretty much all of them. Yeah, some interaction to be able to deal with the better songs in the format certainly does add an element of some spice coming down the pipeline. It makes the songs a little less valuable, and then I assume some of the other actions will start to see a little bit more play as well, given that it can only specifically hit songs. It'll probably end up being a lot stronger, not against Be Prepared, but probably against Swords, because Swords ends up being a lot more of a bully against the sort of lower to the ground decks like this. But this deck certainly would play that card. What is the lowest number of spellbooks I would play? I mean, in a deck like this, I want all 4 because the whole purpose of the deck is just to blast with lore gain, right? In this deck, functionally, the spellbook is just a very resilient threat that is able to, like Pascal. It just ends up being something that I'm looking for this to gain me 3 lore or 4 lore. If it gains more than that, great, but I just need more things that are really sticky, problematic cards. Spellbook, Goat, the evasive cards are like that as well. They require a specific answer to be able to get them off the table, and it can just keep gaining me lore. But I want that density of ways of sort of burning them out or gaining lore without necessarily needing my cards to quest. So that is why I'm running so many. But if you were playing a different flavor of a deck like this, you can definitely go down probably to like 2 pretty easily, I would think. But in this deck, I really just want all of them, because a lot of times you're better off just playing spellbooks and draining them. Yeah, so looking at some of the other flavors of this deck that I had full Flynn Riders, and I put Lucifer in the deck at one point. That was okay. Like, I didn't always have the Yzmas in here, the 3/4. There was a version of this deck that I forgot to put Mimfox in, and I still 3-1'd. Because just, like, the Snake plus Tinkerbell was so strong against RP that I just blasted a Surfer with it, and they just didn't have a real answer then. because the early game of like, oh, I play my Surfer out and it's super safe. I just like ate their flyer, and then it was a huge problem because then we had a flyer of our own, which is one of the reasons that I sort of started looking at a deck like this. Is Ruby just doesn't have great answers to Surfer, and I didn't like losing to Surfer. So you have something like the Snake plus Tinkerbell, or now that I have the Foxes in here, Fox plus Tinkerbell is a very good answer to something like that. Because generally they swing in, you kind of can't play around the Tinkerbell, because you can just always have it in their hand or not. Very rare Yokai, an empty apartment. Thanks for the follows. But yeah, I've been enjoying this deck quite a bit. Let's play a couple more games on it. And then I'll show you one of the other decks that I whipped up that I don't know if is as good. I haven't actually played it at all. But it seems interesting at the very least, as something that, you know, is another way that you can sort of attack the meta. I think it's a little bit more expensive, though. If I remember right, I don't think it's quite as... Oh, it's literally a money pile. It is more expensive than playing Blue Steel. Or it's about as expensive as playing Blue Steel. So that one's not quite as much of a budget deck, but... I doubt that they're going to swap it for Mini, but it wouldn't surprise me if they add Goofies and such for the deck anyway. Because Mini is still too strong on its own to just cut from the deck completely. So this is an aggro race, most likely, given what our opponent is playing. We have a draw where we can just start slamming goats. I don't know if I necessarily need the Bippity-Boppity. We definitely don't need the snake. And I think we can get rid of the Bippity-Boppity here. Yeah, that's a good draw. Okay. So let's get rid of Yzma and say go. I mean, they could be playing something else as well. They may not necessarily be on the same RP deck that they were on before. But going Flynn Rider into the Fox if we want is not so bad. So we probably have to get rid of a goat here, unfortunately, to have a reasonable curve, which I don't love. So it does make it more difficult to race, but we'll play this. I'm fine with this attacking the Maleficent, and I'm also fine with it just ending with me with a Fox in play. And then we can ink the Flynn Rider as well. We got rid of 2 Mauis. We don't necessarily need the Fox in play, but I also don't want the Flynn Rider to be vulnerable to just getting attacked. Though it does make them discard a card. I'd like to deal with this Maleficent if we can. I'm going to try and save the Tinkerbell and just run out rabbits or whatever, but if we need to use the Tinkerbell, we will. See what they do. Could just be Snake and bouncing that. Photo and tap it, sure. I think I inked this Flynn. I think we quest here. Wish I had another thing that wasn't specifically Flynn Rider. Flynn Rider is just not the jam here. But we can do this and say go for now. Like, there's a line where I just straight jam a goat next turn to be able to interact with their board a little better. Just being another 4/3 has value. If their line is to play Arthur, they likely are just going to pass. They end up questing with both. That's interesting. They're working under the assumption that I'm going to leave the Maleficent in play then. Can I race this if I do that? I don't know if I can. I mean, if they have another LeFou in their hand, then it's just a bad idea not to kill this one. If I hit this, they'll quest here, and then at minimum they go to 5. Then I can deal with this next turn. think we dumped the Pascal for sure. I really do weirdly feel like it's kill this. But if they have another run in hand, it's just cost us 1 lore. Which is really awkward. But knowing how this deck works, I don't know if we can reasonably race the, like, just Arthur LaFoe on its own. So I think I'd rather give them the 1, or have them bounce this and then start their combo, which ends up giving them 3, if they have another one, of course. There goes a Fox. They fan the Flames, so they're playing the Fan the Flames list. Interesting. I guess we're going to Perish then. This is 6, 7, 8. We're just literally like dead on board already because of Fan the Flames. But we would have been in a bad spot if we left the LeFou around anyway. Doesn't really change a ton then. Could have been where a Pinocchio would have been good, but this list is really annoying for this one to deal with without the early interaction. Alright, I guess we bash. If they go to 18, we're just dead to the replayed Pinocchio or the Maleficent, right? Not necessarily, I guess, but if they play anything else, because we can Genie one of them. If they just have LeFou, that's problematic. But they untap Pinocchio. Oh, they can untap both. Yeah, that's bad. Guess we lose. Okay. Like, I can't stop that much untapping. Just untap their whole crew. Okay. We have perished. Like, that is a deck that is just dramatically faster than we are, and without any way to interact with the lower to the ground board. It is a bit rough. In this matchup, we really need to go first. Going second is a disaster. The Rabbit is good. The Yzma is unnecessary. We can draw the Goat later. And we don't really need the Tinkerbell. I think we keep those 3. Going Pascal into Flynn does work okay in this matchup. Inking a Goat seems like a disaster. I don't think we need 2 Pascals, though. I mean, it could just be Olaf. They have a lot of answers to cheaper things. Like fire the cannons. Which I guess they just fire the cannons on Flynn, so maybe we do just do this. I think they can fire the cannons either way. Alright, they play out a Bucky. We could bounce the Pascal and just have the Snake in play. Alternatively, we put the Flynn Rider in play. If we bounce it, it gives us more turns to put some of the cards in our hand actually in play. Which I don't hate. I also don't hate just running out the Flynn Rider either. I think is what I'm gonna do. Like, just to push lore. Unfortunately, no 3-drop makes our hand a little worse, because his friends on the other side is not really what I want to be doing on 3. Interesting that they inked a Smash instead of just having one and playing it, but I'm not going to argue about it. Hit with these 2. Do I want to just draw 2 cards? Or do I want to run out another Flynn Rider? I feel like it's probably better just to draw 2 cards. Otherwise, I'm just never going to be casting this. I think that's the play. So far, their draw is not great for us. And our draw has been a little awkward. Like a 3-drop would have been awesome there. A Maleficent, or even a Yzma, I think would have been fine. This just gives them a lot of cards. It doesn't really slow us down that much. I think I'm getting rid of Olaf. So I'm likely just going to run out this goat. Yeah, I think I'm just going to play the goat. Like, I don't think they're going to make us discard that many cards to be able to keep up. Or to be able to truly keep up. Maybe they will, I don't know. So we're at 8, 9 with the Merlin if they do nothing with it. Let us draw an extra card is fine. We have a Yzma, not particularly exciting in this spot. Can be useful to tuck the Merlin back into the deck, the goat. They can probably pretty easily kill Flynn Rider at this point. Sure. We can get rid of Kuzco. I guess the snake. What are we inking next turn? This. In a rough spot here to a Bippity, just because they have the John. Yeah. I'm just gonna replay it. Okay. Weirdly, it doesn't actually put them in an amazing spot to do this. It is bad for our hand, of course. But even if they bin our whole hand, like, they're not that much better off than what they were before. Now they could probably just hit the John into the Flynn Rider. No, that doesn't even work. So we bash with all this and say go. Do I even draw a card with the Donald? I guess it kind of doesn't matter. It forces him to play something. And if they opt to play swords and not play a guy, then... yeah, okay. I mean, our opponent's drawn like 10 extra cards, so... all of our extra card draw didn't get us anywhere, unfortunately. Such as discard, I suppose. Our opponent had an incredible draw, and we had a pretty medium draw. I really quite hope that they don't fully embrace this as a archetype going forward, because it is a pretty toxic archetype in general to support. Like, adding this into your game this early on is really not where I would generally want to have your game be, if it were up to me. I don't think going to 14 really changes much. I need to remove something. The problem with discard is I don't know how many mirrors you've played, but if the entire metagame becomes discard, it is uninhabitable for both players. Because then it becomes who won the die roll and nothing else. And I don't know if I really want to be playing in a metagame that's just who won the die roll. Because it sounds fucking exhausting to me. But, like, the more support that you add for a meta that includes stuff like this, the worse that it becomes. Because if this is just the best deck, then everybody is playing it, and then it becomes, this is the only thing that you could be doing, is making people discard. It's the reason that Beast is $50 as is, because you almost have to play Steel. Yeah, like, casual players cannot stand not playing the game. Like, discarding all their stuff and not being able to play. They cannot stand it. Not like, oh, I don't really enjoy it. They literally will stop playing your TCG entirely. Because they went down to some league night and then they got fucking boomed by a deck like this. Like, they will just never come back. They'll play their precon. If they make a precon that's literally discard, they'll never come back. I guarantee it. I don't know if we can actually win this. We can go to 15 with this next turn, but like we literally can't play a goat either, so I guess we're dead. Like, discard overall for the game is not great. It is no different than, say, land destruction in Magic or any other similar mechanics. Like, denial of resource things are typically a lot less enjoyable for players than things that give them resources, that give both players resources, or that... If you think people are upset about Be Prepared, just wait until discard is a majority of the metagame for it to be so much worse. Like, just miserable. Now, that being said, if they print a card that allows you to interact earlier with stuff like Bucky and John, just by going wide, that isn't specifically Steel, since currently Steel is the only color that can interact with Ward before turn 1,000. But that isn't the problem. Doing a 1-for-1 to stop what they're doing doesn't solve the problem. It's the fact that the two cards that do that they printed in this set, Bucky and Prince John, because they both have Ward, they're functionally items that you can't interact with. And then all of their cards just destroy you. There are tons of answers in Steel to deal with it. Grab Your Swords can deal with it, Pick a Fight can deal with it, Tinkerbell can deal with it pretty well. There are a lot of answers for it, but they're all in one color, which is why if you look at a lot of the top tournament results, it is you are either playing Steel or you are playing Ruby. And the reason that you're either playing Steel or Ruby is because they are the only ones that have answers to stuff like that. That is it. If you're not playing Steel or Ruby, you cannot answer those cards. Period. It's not like, oh, maybe there's... No, there's nothing. Nothing answers those cards unless you're in those colors. So, that's my rant about that. It's not that we need Tremaine-style cards. Tremaine can deal with it, but it costs 6. You need something to interact with that effect earlier. You need something that deals 2 or 3 damage to the entire board, your side and theirs, on turn 4 or turn 5, so that you can't just go wide and hope that that's good enough with a combo like that. Because then the deck may still function, but it will have things that can deal with what it's doing, where currently it has nothing. Like, there needs to be things other than Steel that can interact with go wide boards, and there's nothing. There's literally no cards that interact with playing 3 cards except for Steel or Be Prepared. And Be Prepared costs 7. Literally 7. The aggro deck that we played against last round, we were dead by what, turn 5? Pick a Fight is Steel. Still Steel. All of those cards are Steel. Every card that interacts with Ward cards and does anything before turn 5 or 6 is Steel. There's a single blue card that gives them the choice of what they want to remove. Play it in the deck. The deck isn't Steel. What? Doesn't work. Anyway, so that was this deck. I do think that this deck is pretty good. I think obviously it can struggle sometimes. It does lose occasionally to green-gray. We lost to a faster... Let me refresh it here. We did lose to a faster aggro deck, one that doesn't necessarily play as well into steel as this one can. This one can still win against steel, whereas the Arthur deck I don't think can beat a single Tinkerbell. Like, Tinkerbell Swords just destroys them. But overall, the decks that we were losing to were mostly steel decks. Though we did take plenty of games off of them, so for $50, I think this deck is pretty good. Currently, I don't know how I would build Popsicle. I would look at somebody who's been following the metagame and updating the deck based on the metagame. Presumably, you would build it to ramp into Be Prepared, because otherwise I don't know how you're beating these aggro decks to begin with. In general, I assume that the deck is probably fine against most of steel decks, just as it was before. But you are not beating a lot of the Amethyst decks in the same way that you weren't beating them previously. So however you build it, I would probably look towards some of the ones that have been updated more recently than what I have looked at. So that's that deck. So that's the Emerald Budget Burn. Pretty cheap deck, I think, if you're looking for something a little bit different. It is not that hard to grab a handful of pretty cheap cards and just throw something like this together, and it seems to compete pretty well with, you know, the generic metagame. Most of the red-purple control decks, like the non-aggro decks, this should be pretty favored in because of the 4 spell books, because of the ability to interact with surfers, and because it just has a lot of draw and can just play similarly to what they're doing through the mid-game, and then it just has better closers with the Bippity-Boppity, the spell book, and even the Genie can do pretty well against them, so a decent option here. Alright, so that is that one. That is our Emerald and Amethyst Budget Burn. Thanks for watching.